Yo, what is up, guys? It's Cohen back here again tonight with another episode of After the Buzzer, playoff edition. Once again, the second day of the playoffs are in the books. And if you remember about a week and a half ago, if you are subscribed to the channel, which if you aren't, what the hell are you doing? But if you're subscribed to the channel, a week and a half ago, you probably saw a video from me talking about the playoffs, giving kind of a preview of my thoughts, and especially my playoff prediction video a couple days ago, I said these playoffs had the potential to be some of the best ever. I talked about the matchups, I talked about the return of fans, the just overwhelming, want to return to arenas, the energy is going to be crazy, so many great matchups, so many star-studded players. Looks like I was right. Through the first 2 days of the playoffs, this is some of the best playoff basketball, at least through the first 2 days, we've seen in a long time. There are some great games. Every single game so far has been good. There have been some games where one team starts to get away from the other towards the end of the game. We could talk about Celtics, Nets, and Blazers, Nuggets as examples of those. But all in all, every game has been entertaining for at least a half, most of them 3/4, and a lot of them, if not all of them, for most of the game. It's been an incredible playoffs for the first 2 days, and I know it's just 2 days, but still, I think this is incredible, and I see more people starting to share my take of that. These playoffs have the potential to be some of the best ever, and I love how invested people are getting. I'm addicted to playoff basketball, so I've watched every single second of all 4 of these games, so I want to talk about them with you. Make sure to drop a like, drop a subscribe if you like NBA content, playoff videos coming almost every single day, so you don't want to miss out on those, so make sure you subscribe so you don't miss them. You don't have to go looking for them. They'll show up right in your sub box. So, starting off, we're going to go with Lakers-Suns. This is the game that most people were probably looking forward to today. The casual fans probably saw this game and said, oh, I'll watch that one. Because, LeBron James, Anthony Davis, Chris Paul, Devin Booker, which is a name that's going to become a household name sooner than later if he continues to play throughout the playoffs like he did today. Devin Booker is a guy that I've been a huge fan of for a while. I'm a big Devin Booker fan. I've even thought about getting a jersey. I kind of want to get a shirt or something because he is one of my favorite players. I'm actually wearing my Chris Paul All-Star shirt from last season when he was with the Thunder. Shout out Chris Paul, Thunder legend. We'll talk about him in a second and his injury, but I want to start with Devin Booker and DeAndre Ayton in this game, because the reason the Suns won this game, 99-90 if you didn't see the score, the reason the Suns won this game is because of those two guys. Chris Paul in the first quarter, he hurt his shoulder, and he did end up coming back in the game, and it looks like he's going to be able to continue playing throughout the series, but he was very clearly laboring it. There were multiple times where he would dribble with, I believe it was his right arm, he would dribble with that right arm, and he would just lose the ball, or he just couldn't keep up with it. He does not look like he's 100%. And if Chris Paul's not 100%, this series becomes much more difficult for the Suns as it continues to go on. Even though the Lakers lost this one, they're going to make adjustments and they're going to come back strong. They have Anthony Davis and LeBron James, who will get to both of those guys and what the Lakers did wrong, and more importantly, what the Suns did right in a second. But Chris Paul's injury does have the potential to affect this series. But the hope is that Chris Paul is able to play through it, he continues to play, and that the Suns can play up to their full capacity, because if they're able to, this looks like, unless the Lakers make some big adjustments, it's going to be a tough series for the Lakers. The Suns fans were rocking, like I mentioned, Devin Booker in his first game, such a big fan of his, and to see for years people talk about how Devin Booker puts up empty stats, Devin Booker doesn't do this, Devin Booker doesn't do that. To see him get a playoff opportunity, now that he's got Chris Paul, now he's got like a Jay Crowder, now that the supporting cast has improved, and he gets the opportunity to face the defending champion Los Angeles Lakers in the first game of his playoff career, and he comes out and he cooks them. Devin Booker could not be stopped. There was no one on the Lakers that could stop him, and this is what I talked about when I was talking about the series. I talked about how if the Suns were going to come in and win this game, Devin Booker had to take over. Devin Booker had to show the Lakers that no one can guard him, and that's what he did today. 34-7 and 8 assists. Chris Paul, after getting hurt, he didn't quite look right. He did end up with 8 assists still, but only scoring 7 points and 4 rebounds. This doesn't seem like a game you think that the Suns would win. But through a combination of Devin Booker stepping up in the playmaking department, Devin Booker has been an underrated playmaker for way too long. He averaged like 6.5 assists for the past 2 seasons, and people still look at him as just a scorer. Devin Booker can score, he can play make, he can run in transition, he can do whatever you need him to do as a player on the offensive side of the ball. Sometimes defensively, there is some to be desired, but on the offensive side of the ball, Devin Booker is a dynamo. He does whatever you need him to do, and that's what he did today. He stepped up when Chris Paul got hurt, and he stepped up when his teammates needed him most. Chris Paul went out, and I was like, oh, this might be they mentioned Chris Paul might come back in, but I was like, okay, while Chris Paul's off in the locker room, whenever he was on the bench, I was worried that the Suns might start to get blown out because Chris Paul is a great playoff player and he really slows the game down and makes things easier for the rest of the guys. and I wasn't quite sure how the young guys were going to react to the playoff environment. And Devin Booker and DeAndre Ayton, who I'll talk about a lot in a second, Devin Booker stepped up to the challenge, and he looks ready. He looks like one of those guys that just steps up when the playoffs come around, no matter what his age is, no matter what his experience is, no matter who he's facing in the defending champions, that as a 2 seed for the Suns, facing a 7 seed, they're the underdogs. People don't expect them to win this series. I'll be honest, I picked the Lakers to win this series because I'm not betting against LeBron James, but I did pick this to at least go 7 games. And I said in my playoff prediction video, the Suns can take this series. They could take this in 6, they could take this in 7. 5 I think is a little too crazy, but they could take this series because they're that good, even though they're facing the defending champions. And they had a perfect game plan. What I really want to talk about is DeAndre Ayton in this game. Ayton had Anthony Davis in jail. Anthony Davis was on Alcatraz, DeAndre Ayton Island, whatever you want to call it. DeAndre Ayton had him stuck. He couldn't do anything. And I made a tweet about like 5-10 minutes into the game because I saw what was happening and I said, okay, DeAndre Ayton has the potential to be not only but the X factor in this series. DeAndre Ayton has the potential to affect this series like almost nobody else can because he has the job of, it's really hard to slow down LeBron James. Mikal Bridges did a good job today, but over the course of a whole series, it's really tough to slow down LeBron James. DeAndre Ayton has to slow down Anthony Davis however he can while also putting up points on the offensive end, especially if Chris Paul isn't feeling great in terms of that shoulder injury. DeAndre Ayton has to step up even more, and that's exactly what he did today, and if he continues to do that for the entirety of the series, it's really tough for me to see the Suns losing this. Because the way that he played Anthony Davis was incredible. He was super physical with him. Every time Anthony Davis got into the paint, DeAndre Ayton was up on him, banging around with him, knocking into him, posting him up, running in transition, whatever he had to do to tire Anthony Davis out. Anthony Davis is a guy that got a lot of rest due to an injury, but ultimately, him and LeBron James and the Lakers as a whole played in the finals not too long ago. They're probably tired, and the Suns have fresh legs, and they said, all right, we're going to get out and run, we're going to get out and transition, we're going to play hard, tough, physical defense, we're going to do whatever we have to do to bang up with those guys, slow them down, and really wear them out, and that's exactly what they did, and it worked. It worked perfectly. Anthony Davis settled for mid-range jumpers. He would shoot like fadeaway mid-ranges. He hardly got to the basket in this game through a combination of DeAndre Ayton bodying up and keeping him away from the basket, and a combination of just tiring him out, running up and down the court, doing whatever he had to do to get Anthony Davis out of rhythm. DeAndre Ayton put up 21 and 16 in this game. He was by far the best big man on the court today, and it wasn't even close. For a guy, Anthony Davis, that a lot of people going into this offseason saw as a top 5, top 7 player in the NBA, DeAndre Ayton made it look like he was the top 5, 7 player in the NBA, and Anthony Davis had never played in a playoff game before. It was incredible. I've never seen anything like the way that he really shut down Anthony Davis. If he continues to do that, it's going to be a long series for AD. I do expect AD to kind of turn it around, but ultimately, DeAndre Ayton had a great game plan. Monty Williams, shout out to him. He had the Suns team ready to play. He had a great game plan for slowing down two incredible generational players in LeBron James and Anthony Davis, defending champions. It didn't matter to the Suns. They thought and knew they were going to win this game. And shout out to the Suns fans. They were roaring for the Suns. Like, that arena was rocking, and it was super cool to see that many fans back in the arena. I love to see it. I'll go quickly on the Lakers side of the ball because I'm already 8 minutes into the video, but LeBron had a pretty good game with 18, 7, and 10. He didn't shoot as much as I would have liked him to. Like I said, he had 8 points in like the first quarter and then had 10 the rest of the game. 10 assists. His playmaking was incredible today. Guys just weren't hitting shots. Dennis Schroeder had 14. He kind of stepped up, but KCP, Kuzma, Wesley Matthews, Talon Horton-Tucker, Anthony Davis, definitely. All those guys have to step up and hit more of those shots. And LeBron's got to take more. I think LeBron needs to be more aggressive. I know last season they won a championship by LeBron not going too crazy and kind of deferring to his teammates a little bit more, getting them confidence. And I'm sure they'll get into rhythm. This is not going to be like a sweep or anything like that. But the Lakers need to turn things around quick. They need to try and take at least one in Phoenix. Because if they go down 2-0, it's going to be really tough for them to dig their way out of that hole, especially with the way that Devin Booker is stepping up, DeAndre Ayton came to play, and all those young guys, that role players like Jay Crowder who have been there before, everyone came to play. That's what the Suns are going to do. So the Lakers have a chance to still take this series. It's not anywhere near over, but the Suns came to play and they're not afraid of the Lakers at all. They're ready for the challenge. Hawks Knicks. This game, so cool to see playoff basketball back in the Mecca. It was so cool to see Madison Square Garden bumping, but the Hawks won. This was a big win for them. I picked the Hawks to win this series, mainly because I didn't know how the Knicks offense would translate. I know they have a great defense, but a lot of these playoff games kind of turn into those tough, grinded out defensive games anyways. And so having a great defense, while it is like a huge plus in the playoffs, typically, if you have a great offense, you can sometimes outplay a great defense in the playoff games, and that's exactly what happened today. Julius Randle, not a good game from him. 15 points, 12 rebounds, 4 assists, but shooting like 25% from the field is not going to cut it. He's got to be better. He was the guy who led the Knicks here. He's got to do a better job. He did a good job rebounding. He did make some tough buckets, but ultimately, if the Knicks want it to win this series, he can't shoot like that. He just can't. Reggie Bullock, only 6 points. Nerlens Noel, only 6 points. Not that I expect much from Nerlens Noel in terms of offensive production. RJ had 14 and 11 rebounds. It was a decent game from him. Alfred Payton only played 8 minutes, and I think that was great. I don't think Alfred Payton needs to play a lot in this game. The big guys that played really well in this game for the Knicks were Derrick Rose and Alec Burks. Alec Burks with 27, 17 for Derrick Rose, also 10 for Emmanuel Quickley, who I think maybe should have played more minutes. Derrick Rose played 38 tonight, which was a lot. But, Derrick Rose was killing it. He was the guy who ultimately hit the shot to tie this game towards the end. And then Trae Young, man. Trae Young is built for this moment. We had a lot of young guys really step up today. And I'm going to talk about more in a second, especially when I get to that Grizzlies Jazz game, and I can talk about John Morant and Dylan Brooks stepping up big time. But young players stepped the hell up today. And they've been stepping up this entire playoffs through the first 2 days. I know I keep saying the whole playoffs, but it's been 2 days. So Trae Young, he got double teamed and he split the double, ran right around the side and hit a floater that kind of ringed around the basket to waste a couple more seconds and ultimately fell in with about 0.9 seconds left on the clock. And then the Knicks ran one of the worst out of bounds plays I've ever seen, giving the ball to Julius Randle for a turnaround mid-range that there was, with 0.9 seconds, there's no chance you're getting that off. You've got to do a catch and shoot. Just the play didn't work out. Either that or the Hawks just completely sniffed it out and stopped it before it even happened. But the Hawks winning a really important game, going in Madison Square Garden with 15,000 fans after playing very rarely in front of fans this entire season is a big task to do, especially when you're a team like the Hawks that a couple of those guys don't have any playoff experience. Trae Young, John Collins, DeAndre Hunter, Kevin Huerter, Bogdan Bogdanovic. These are guys that haven't played in the playoffs before, but the vets really showed up for the Hawks today. Gallinari with 7, Lou Williams with 13 points. Those guys kind of showed up, especially Lou Williams. They were bleeding, the Hawks were, towards the end of that third quarter. And Lou Williams had I think it was 9 straight points or 8 straight points to really calm them down and be like, hey guys, we're going to be okay. We're going to slow things up. That's why they got a veteran like him. Clint Capella had only 9 points, but 13 rebounds. He was a monster on the glass tonight. And then Trae Young, 32, 7, and 10. Like I said, Trae Young is just built for this moment. Trae Young, he can do it on the biggest stage. He's proven it now. And the Hawks have to figure out how to stop him because Trae Young really got whatever he wanted. He hit the same exact floater over and over and over again, and the Knicks could not stop it. They really miss a guy like Mitchell Robinson, a super athletic guy that they could put down there, because when Nerlens Noel isn't in the game, no one's really stopping Trae Young from getting to the basket. And I think that's going to be a big storyline to follow in this series is how the hell do you stop Trae Young, because he's a problem. And while the Knicks have been one of the best defensive teams in the entire league this season, they don't have any great one-on-one guard defenders. RJ Barrett, pretty solid. Frank Ntilikina, he's solid, but he's not really that playable in the playoffs. I don't think he's going to play that many minutes. He played 1 minute tonight, and he got a game winner hit on him. They put him in for the last possession on Trae Young, and he couldn't stop Trae Young from hitting a game winner. So I'm not sure if that bodes well for him to play more minutes in these playoffs. So they've got to figure out how to stop Trae. If they can't do that, the Hawks are going to win this series, and it might not be too difficult. I was worried about how the Hawks were going to stop Julius Randle, but today he kind of just stopped himself. He settled for a lot of tough jumpers, and he's been doing that all season. But when you get to the playoffs, you have to find times, because these are tough, physical, grinded out games in the playoffs. You have to figure out how to get some easy shots. And there's not any great playmakers outside of really Julius Randle on this roster. And I think that might come back to bite them, because when Julius Randle isn't able to create his own shot, he's going to have to settle for so many tough shots. It's already physical. He's going to be tired. And as the guy that the Knicks rely on, he's got to be there. If he's not there, they're not going to win many games. I do think it's a good sign for them that Julius Randle shot and played so poorly and they only lost by 2 points. But on the same side, there are so many guys on the Hawks that could have played better. So it goes both ways. It'll be interesting to see where this series goes. But for right now, game 1 goes to the Hawks, 107-105. For the Sixers and the Wizards game, I'll get into Memphis and Jazz last, I think. I'll do Wizards and Sixers. Now, this was also a really good game. This was one where I wasn't sure if it was going to be a great game, but Joel Embiid getting into foul trouble really helped the Wizards out in this one. I had people talking on my timeline about how, oh shoot, this might be a more interesting series than we thought. And I do think the Wizards have potential to take a game or two, but Ultimately, what really killed the Sixers in the first half was that Joel Embiid just could not get on the court. He got three really quick fouls. He got two quick fouls. They put him back in, and then he got another quick foul. He only played 10 minutes in the first half, and he ended up playing 30 minutes in total. So he sat for only 4 minutes in that second half of the game, and the second half is really when they killed them. The Wizards, great game plan in the first half. Well, they had a good game plan, but without Joel Embiid, we didn't really get to see it executed much. The problem is, I mentioned this in my video, I think, talking about my playoff predictions, that I was really worried how the Wizards were going to stop Tobias Harris. And the answer was they weren't. Tobias Harris putting up 37 points, 6 rebounds, 2 assists. I think he had almost 30 at half, too. I think he had 28 at half, if I remember correctly, or something around that range. They just couldn't stop him. Nobody could stop him. The problem is they have game planned so much for Joel Embiid that even when Embiid wasn't in, there was just no one ready to stop Tobias Harris. The Wizards really killed the Sixers in the first half with their speed, and they ran up and down the court, which I think is the best way for them to try and win this game. But the problem is, by the end of the game, when it got slow and grinded out, the Sixers are just the better team in that aspect. They have Joel Embiid, who even when the Wizards threw doubles and triple teams at him, and it didn't even matter. Joel Embiid had one play where he was triple teamed, and he still put it up and in for an and one, I'm pretty sure. There was nothing they could do to stop him. They don't have any personnel on this roster. Alex Len had a good game, but in terms of stopping Joel Embiid, Daniel Gafford's probably their best bet, and Gafford gets fouls way too quickly. Against Joel Embiid is a master at making you foul him. If you put your hand a little bit over his arm, he's going to swing it up and get a foul on you. He's just really smart, and he's a high IQ player, especially in the low post. And if you don't double him off the catch, that was the biggest problem, I think, for the Wizards today. They would double Joel Embiid, but they would do it way too late. Especially towards the end of the game, there's a good example of this. Rui Hachimura came to double team Joel Embiid. It was an out of bounds play. Joel Embiid got the ball out of bounds after it was like a foul or a time. I think it was a foul, or just the ball rolled out of bounds. Embiid gets it on the catch, and he's facing up against, I think it was Alex Len or Robin Lopez at this point, who's just putting their hand up, and Rui Hachimura comes over to double team, but it wasn't as he caught the ball. He waited until Joel Embiid got kind of in a rhythm, did a couple jab steps, and kind of felt out the possession, and then he tried to run over and double. Embiid saw he was running over and shot before Rui could get there, and he just swished it. Embiid is so good at shooting that mid-range. He makes it look so effortless, and if the Wizards don't double him off the catch for most of this series, they're screwed. And even if they do double him, Joel Embiid has gotten so good at passing out. There were so many times today where in the past, if it was not this season Joel Embiid, but last season or the season before Joel Embiid, he would have been forced into a turnover off some of these double teams. But he's gotten so good now, his vision has improved, and his ability to throw these passes across the court and hit the guy in the shooting pocket to knock down these shots. Seth Curry, Danny Green as well, guys that can actually hit those shots, so Joel Embiid is more willing to pass out of those double teams. It just makes the Sixers so much more dangerous, and I don't think the Wizards have the personnel at all to stop them. Not enough defensive stoppers. Great game from Bradley Beal. Russell Westbrook had 16, 5, and 14, but just not a great game from him in general. Shout out my guy Russ, but not the best game from him. Ben Simmons, his playmaking was incredible. He had so many passes today that I had no idea how they got to where they got to. I don't think it's talked about enough how great of a playmaker he is, but all in all, the Sixers as a 1 seed, beating the 8 seed as typically 1 seeds do. Sometimes, we'll get into that in a second, but this is going to be a tough series for the Wizards. I think it's a 4 or 5 game series for the Sixers. Joel Embiid only played 10 minutes. It was like a perfect half for the Wizards to start off, and I think they were up like 1 at the half. It's going to be really tough, almost impossible. But at the same time, the Wizards, I don't think they have much expectations going into this series. At least I don't think their fans do from what I saw on the timeline. Hopefully Russ and Beal continue to put up good performances and make these tough games, but it's really hard. The Sixers just kind of outmatch them. And now we head into our second 1-8 matchup of the NBA playoffs. Grizzlies Jazz with the Grizzlies as the 8 seed coming out and winning by 3 points against the Utah Jazz. They already broke my bracket. When I made my playoff predictions, I said if the Grizzlies won the play-in game, I would predict a sweep. I, of course, did not foresee Donovan Mitchell being out for this game, which definitely affected it. But even still, the Grizzlies had a great game plan going into today, and they executed it really well. When Rudy Gobert was not... First of all, Rudy Gobert, if you want to see how impactful Rudy Gobert is, just watch today's game. If you just watch Jazz games, you see how important he is. When Rudy Gobert wasn't on the court, the Grizzlies were getting pretty much whatever they wanted at the rim, and Rudy Gobert fouled out of this game. He was in foul trouble for a lot of the game. And that was a lot due to the fact that they were attacking him, and they kept giving the ball to Jonas Valanciunas to go at him. Even though Valanciunas only scored, well, he scored 15 points today, which is pretty good, 15, 12, and 3. But earlier in the game, for most of the game, he was pretty low on scoring. However, he kept putting the ball in there. He kept going at Rudy Gobert, and the Grizzlies are the best paint team in the NBA in terms of scoring. They score the most paint points in the NBA, and going into the series, I thought that was going to be a problem. However, they did a great job of attacking Rudy Gobert, not only that, but making him foul them. They would send bodies in front of him in the paint so that he would get offensive fouls. They would attack him in the paint so that he got defensive fouls. They did whatever they could to get Gobert out of the game. And when Gobert was out, they took advantage. That's the game plan. That's what they have to do. They also had to win this game without Donovan Mitchell to make this a series, and that's exactly what they did. If they had lost tonight's game, I think it would have been a pretty easy sweep. But now they've got momentum. They stole one in Utah, and even if they lose, they go back to Memphis tied 1-1. It's exactly that's all you can hope for, is to win at least one of these games in Utah. That's exactly what they did in the first game. They took advantage of Donovan Mitchell being out. If they could win a second game, that would also be huge. I expect Donovan Mitchell to come back next game. I don't think the Jazz are too worried in terms of keeping Donovan Mitchell out, because I think they trust themselves as the 1 seed to beat the 8 seed. But the Grizzlies are tough, and the Grizzlies have a history of beating 1 seeds. They're one of the only teams ever to do it, and this was a good performance from them. Dillon Brooks, 31-7-2. John Morant, 26-4-4. When Rudy Gobert fouled out of this game, the Grizzlies got whatever they wanted at the rim. The Jazz started to make a comeback because Bojan Bogdanovic started hitting some clutch threes, but every time they would go back down the court, John Morant would just do basically a layup line. It was like John Morant and Dillon Brooks were doing layup lines out there without Rudy Gobert on the court. Derek Favors, good offensive center, not a very good defensive center, at least not at the level Rudy Gobert is. And when you have high-flying guys like Dillon Brooks and especially John Morant, they're just going to shoot right over you. And that's exactly what they did for most of this game. The Jazz had a chance. They were down 17 at one point in this game, but they kept fighting back, especially at the end there, and they had a chance at the buzzer to send it to overtime, and Bojan Bogdanovic just missed. He hit so many clutch threes. Eventually, he kind of just ran out. It was a great game, and a lot of people were talking about how boring this series was going to be. Please don't be one of those people. I highly recommend you watch this series if you like basketball, because even though these aren't two big teams, Donovan Mitchell, John Morant, Rudy Gobert, these are big names. Dillon Brooks is trying to establish himself as a young and upcoming star too. Great two-way player. He's going to be one of the most hated players in the league someday because of how good he is defensively, as well as how much he gets in other players' heads. He's like a Marcus Smart type where you love him if he's on your team and you hate him if he's not on your team. Although I like Dillon Brooks just because he's one of those hard-nosed defensive players that really gets in people's faces. The Grizzlies are fun. So if you're one of the people that were like, oh, I'm not going to watch this, it's Grizzlies, Jazz, whatever, please watch this series. There's a lot of entertainment value in this, especially now that the Grizzlies have won a game, because now they're feeling themselves, their momentum's going. Everyone keeps betting against them. I'll give them credit. I bet against them when the Warriors played them. I thought the Warriors were going to win. I thought the Jazz were going to sweep this series. I keep betting against them. I'm not going to do that anymore. I don't know which. I still think the Jazz. I just said that. I still think the Jazz are going to win this series because they are the 1 seed, and if Donovan Mitchell comes back, it helps them with a lot of their problems. They really just couldn't get consistent scoring tonight, which is exactly what Donovan Mitchell brings to the table. Mike Conley, 22-11. Like I said, Rudy Gobert had a pretty solid game with 11 and 15, but he was limited to only 25 minutes. 29 for Bojan. He had a great game. But Clarkson, 14, you need more from him. If Donovan Mitchell's going to be out, Royce O'Neal, only 3 points. They missed Donovan Mitchell scoring bad, and I think ultimately when he comes back, a lot of those issues are going to disappear, and the Jazz still will win this series. But it's a lot more interesting than a lot of people are giving it credit for, so please watch this series. It's really good basketball. Shout out to Dillon Brooks and John Morant and the entire Memphis Grizzlies organization for coming out, winning this game, and just punching Utah first. We'll see if Utah can punch back in the next game, but those are all the games for today. Let me know what you thought of these games. Let me know what you thought of the video. Let me know who you think is going to win each of these series. It's still not too late to make a prediction for who's going to win the finals, who's going to win each of these series. Ultimately, what were some of your takeaways from these games today? I appreciate you guys watching. If you made it this far, say shout out John Morant in the comment section below. I will see you guys later. Real one, say it back.